Blog Talk Radio.
And good evening, everybody, and thank you for choosing King Jordan Radio for January 29th, 2015. This is King Jordan you're listening to. Tonight on the show, we're going to be talking about Aaron Hernandez. We're going to be talking about the New England Patriots, DeflateGate, if you will. We'll talk about Jody Harris and much, much more. Also, I like to promote a wonderful person in Sharon, and all you fans of Joey Jackson, I encourage you to go to Joey Jackson Fans on Facebook. That's right, Joey Jackson Fans. Sharon has been doing it for some time, and she is a wonderful. Shout out to Sharon, Madeline, Paige, all of them. They are wonderful people, and keep up the great work. So we are waiting for Joey to check in. Also, I'd like to give you some information. Follow the show on King Jordan Radio on Facebook, on Twitter, at Mr. King Jordan. We're going to have Tom Mesereau on February 13th, Friday the 13th, at a special time at 11 p.m., 8 p.m. Pacific time. And then the week after that, Thursday at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, where we will have a triple threat with Beth Karras, Dwayne Cates, and Ann Bremner. Also, 1 week from today, we will have a life coach, Mary Dubette. She will go over anything you want to know in the world of social media, what to do if somebody dumps you, what to do if in any life situation, because she is a certified life coach. So join us next week as we wait for Joey Jackson to call in. And if you want to hang with us, the number is 347-857-2950. Okay, I believe we do have Mr. Joey Jackson. Ladies and gentlemen, he is a CNN legal analyst. He is also a defense attorney here in New York City. Ladies and gentlemen, making his return from October, the one and only Joey Jackson. Good evening, Joey. How are you? And welcome to King
Jordan. How are you? I'm fabulous. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. How are you?
I always like to say that I'm surviving in a crazy world because the world is ever so crazy. But you know what? There's humanity in it because there's great people out there who are also doing great things. But sometimes, you know, these murder trials and everything else get you a little bit jaded. But I have a lot of faith in mankind, so everything is good, George.
Yeah, and one of those great people I just mentioned was Sharon, who I just mentioned, the Joey Jackson fan page, does a wonderful job.
Is she fabulous, or is she fabulous? She is like no other. She's committed. She is just
one of a kind.
Generosity and spirit and everything else, and you know, and that's the kind of people she attracts to the page, and you know. So I owe her a debt of gratitude. Maddie's fabulous too. There's too many too many names to mention, but they're all great, you know. And I got to give a shout out to my wife. Team Sharon. She, you know, between Maddie, Sharon, my wife, getting the message out there and everything else, it's just it's a fabulous group of people. So we're very blessed and fortunate. And then of course there's you with your great program. And, you know, covering these many trials and performing the service that you do. Keep it up, and may this year be a fabulous year for you and many more thereafter.
Well, thank you. And you are making your return from October, but we have a big show coming up this Sunday. And I ask everybody this week, who are you going with? The the New England Cheaters, Patriots, or the Seattle Seahawks?
What do you mean? There's a game on Sunday? What game? Is it really? It's
I think
Sunday?
there's about 50 million that tune in.
That's about it. Listen, I'm telling you, one of the reasons I tune in, not only for the game, but of course the commercials. I can't wait to see what the commercials are all about. So it should be pretty exciting, a lot of fun.
One commercial is about abuse of women, believe it or not. And with the Ray Rice thing, somebody took an ad out for that. That should be interesting. But I do want to get to...
but I think it's an important issue. It certainly is. The NFL, it certainly had its share of ups and downs this year, and it had a major down. And I think it's important to shed light on the issue of domestic violence, to speak out about it, to let women know that they shouldn't be ashamed, that there are outlets out there to help and support them, and to sort of educate men that there's under no circumstance should men be touching women, in any offensive way. There's just no room for it at all. And so therefore, I think if the NFL continues to give a message out there that speaks out against it, I think we could see some real change. So kudos for commercial being out there. I look forward to seeing what it is on Super Bowl Sunday.
And who are you going with?
The team that wins.
That's a very good pick. That's a very good pick.
It's interesting, Jordan. I know you want to get to a lot of the legal issues, but just as an aside, of course, as it is the Super Bowl, the domestic violence issue obviously is important, and it's DeflateGate, and that's DeflateGate. But, the reality is that when I look at the Super Bowl, I see the Patriots, they win all the time, but then the Seahawks are winning all the time.
They haven't won.
They
haven't won the Super Bowl in 10 years. They've been to the playoffs every single year. They've been winners, right? In that standpoint.
Because the Giants, the Giants with the helmet catch and when during the perfect season were able to take them out of it. But they have certainly, while they have not won the Super Bowl, they have been in contention. They have put strong teams on the field. They have dominated, the AFC East. And in light of that, I always like to go for the underdog, but there is no underdog. So
you're right. That's what I was just telling somebody. There's nobody to root for. I mean, I don't like the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, every year there's somebody. Last year I was rooting for Peyton because I wanted to see him get a second ring, and you saw the score of that game last year. They only got 8 points. But nonetheless, speaking of the Patriots, my Aaron Hernandez trial set to begin. I want to play this clip for the audience, and I want to get your take on the other side. It's Aaron Hernandez, and as I'm waiting for the play clip to load, here it comes. Aaron Hernandez being charged with murder. Let's take a listen as this
what was your reaction when you heard the
clip is coming.
Well, Jay, the first thing I did was I went back to sort of revisit the timeline of things, and this double homicide was in July of 2012, and about 6 weeks later, the Patriots had reached a big contract extension with Aaron Hernandez. So I went back and sort of revisited what was being said at the time. And Aaron Hernandez, was talking about how much that contract extension had meant to him and how it was sort of the team and, endorsing him and believing in him. And he said at the time, and he said, I have a lot more to give back, and all I can do is play my heart out for them, make the right decisions, and live life as a Patriot. That was in August of 2012, and when I think back to it now, what he was saying at the time, about 6 weeks after this, double homicide, it just is remarkable to me to think that type of stuff was going on, and the team and the contract extension with Hernandez was unfolding shortly thereafter. Just remarkable to think about those two things in confluence there.
Mike, as you went back and thought about the timeline, we've learned that there were questions about Hernandez's character that the Patriots had learned of when they were thinking of drafting him out of Florida. Do you know if there was any new information that they had learned about Hernandez in the time that they had drafted him from the time that they had given him the extension?
I don't know that, Jay, and I would just say this. I don't think they would have given him that contract extension if they had serious concerns at this level. I mean, this is a team that is very thorough on these type of things, and they wouldn't make that type of investment, in my opinion, if they felt like there was anything even close to this. I really believe, Jay, that this surprised them. In fact, going back, to that time when they gave him the contract extension, the owner, Robert Kraft, was talking about how Hernandez made a donation to Robert Kraft's wife's memorial fund of $50,000, and he called it, Jay, one of the most touching moments that he's had as an owner since he owned the team. So I just think they were really blindsided by this. I really do believe that.
The breaking news is very recent, so we may not have any reaction, but have you heard anything at all from any of the Patriots front office or players?
Not at this time, Jay. I'm actually down here at the stadium as we speak. They were bringing some of their rookie class out to speak with reporters. Obviously, that becomes secondary, but I'm not expecting to hear anything from the team. But, of course, if they do
top of the
anything,
screen, the official this far back, 25 yards away.
Okay, Joey, big trial coming up, actually getting ready to get underway. What is your take on this whole Aaron Hernandez situation?
You know, it's a big trial. It absolutely is. The only issue I have with the clip is that it presumes guilt. We should presume innocence. I don't know what happened in the double homicide. He's not being tried for the double homicide yet. That is the incident, just so the listeners are clear. That's the incident in 2012 over the summer, allegedly, where he executed two people after a confrontation in a nightclub. Of course, that happened in Boston also. That's the allegation. That'll be tried after this case. In this particular case, of course, this relates to Odin Lloyd, the semi-professional football player, and that's separate and apart from the double homicide. That occurred on June 17th of 2013. And so, obviously he'll have his day in court. I think that there are very compelling sides that both can make. From a prosecution's perspective, we all know that it's a largely circumstantial case. It's circumstantial in that there is no confession. There is no direct eyewitness who, is coming forward to this point testifying. I mean, there are obviously the other two individuals, Mr. Wallace, a co-defendant, and Mr. Ortiz, a co-defendant, two others who were with Aaron Hernandez at the time in that Nissan Altima at that park. But, there hasn't been an indication yet if they'll come out and testify against him. So based on no eyewitnesses, no confession, no murder weapon, you're left with simply circumstances. And I think from a prosecution's point of view, they're going to argue that those circumstances are compelling. You have Aaron Hernandez texting Mr. Wallace and Mr. Ortiz, encouraging them to meet up. You have him texting Odin Lloyd saying, hey, are we all going out? Then, of course, you have him renting the Altima, the Nissan Altima rent-a-car. You have him picking up, that is Aaron Hernandez and his other two co-defendants, Wallace and Ortiz. You have him picking up Odin Lloyd at 2:30 a.m. At 3:30 a.m., they leave the industrial park. There's witnesses who hear shots fired, moments before that. They then have, when they're leaving, Odin Lloyd obviously is in the park, and the three of them go. They have surveillance video of Aaron Hernandez in his home carrying what looks to be a gun after this particular murder. And so the prosecution is going to say, look, if it looks like a duck, sounds like a duck, quacks like a duck, what else could it be but a duck? From the defense. And
what about the cleaning? He did a full cleaning of his house, not like an ordinary, hire a maid and, for $10 an hour. He did a spring cleaning, I read actually, to get rid of possible DNA, alleged stuff. That's in the report.
I think, Jordan, certainly all of that will come out. His fiancée, that is Aaron Hernandez's fiancée, she's a wild card. There's indications that she may have hid, the murder weapon. Who knows what she'll say, if anything. Who knows if she, ultimately will testify. But the prosecution is going to say that although it's a circumstantial case, the circumstances certainly point to him. And just remember, what circumstantial case is. If we go inside and it's dry, and then we go back outside and there are puddles on the ground, and there are, droplets of moisture on cars, we can reasonably conclude it rained. And so therefore, without asking a jury to speculate, the jury is going to be allowed to make certain inferences from facts, and the inference will be that he and his co-defendants did it. A couple other things to point out. One is that, it's charged under what they call joint venture liability. And joint venture liability means that you need only be an active participant. The prosecution doesn't have to show that he actually pulled the trigger. The prosecution merely needs to show that he was actively involved. And as a result of that, he's guilty. The other thing is the prosecution doesn't have to show motive, but certainly the jury is going to be looking for that, and it's going to be a tough haul. Now, I should say from a defense point of view, remember that a lot of evidence was excluded. A lot of evidence was not allowed in for the jury to hear, which they won't be hearing. And just so that the listeners know, these things are very important. Number one, we started off this conversation by talking about the double homicide. Those jurors are not going to learn anything about his participation or alleged participation in any double homicide that is Aaron Hernandez. They will not hear that. You may ask, well, why? Wouldn't that be relevant? Well, it might be relevant, but it's also what we call overly prejudicial. And in the event the jurors heard it, they may come to the conclusion that, hey, if he's involved in a double homicide, certainly he did this here. And what we want are jurors who are focused on the current issues and facts and not to presume guilt based upon what you may or may not have done at some previous time. The other thing they won't hear is, you might remember his friend Alexander Bradley, who was suing him in federal court saying he shot him in the eye. That, of course, happened in February of 2013, mere months before this incident happened. The prosecution is not going to be allowed to get any evidence about that. There's also a photograph that they have, the prosecution of Aaron Hernandez with a .45 caliber gun that was taken in 2009. That's not going to be admitted into evidence. The police also found .45 caliber shells, ammunition, at the residence of Aaron Hernandez. That will not be coming in as evidence because of the faulty search warrant. And then, of course, text messages involving Odin Lloyd just before he was killed, him texting his sister saying, remember who I'm with. And exactly, that's not coming in. So the defense has done its job in terms of getting evidence out, not admissible. And from the listener's point of view, I know it may seem, unfair. Like, hey, wait a minute, this is information. Why is the jury not allowed to hear it? Well, you always want to have a fair fight, and you don't want to prejudice the defendant, and you want to make what the defendant did or did not do about the facts and circumstances of June 17th of 2013 and nothing else. And so the judges felt, based upon that, those things being too prejudicial, based upon warrant violations, that they would not come in. And in terms of the text messages, the prosecution tried to get them in under a theory called dying declaration, which is where basically, that's the last dying word that somebody says, but the judge said, hey, that's not a dying declaration. That's merely someone that is Odin Lloyd communicating with his sister. So, look, the defense has its work cut out for them. And then finally on the defense issue, remember what they went after today. They went after the issue of a sloppy police investigation that was unprofessional. That's what they said in their opening statement today. That is the defense. The second thing they said is that they focused on Aaron Hernandez, the police that is, because of his celebrity status, and had blinders on and just went after him, disregarding any other thing that possibly could have led to the death. And, of course, they focused on the issue of lack of motive, saying, why would this guy who has everything going for him, a beautiful little daughter, just won a $40 million contract, why does he want this guy dead? So I think it's going to be a very, very good fight in court. And it's going to really depend upon how the evidence plays out, what people say, how they say it, and how effective the prosecution is presenting it, and how effective the defense is in terms of cross-examining and poking holes in testimony. So good trial coming up. Good trial.
No question. Also, we have the Jody Arias death penalty retrial. Let me play this clip for you, and then I want to hear your take on the other side.
There have been some
Sure.
really big developments in the Jody Arias sentencing retrial today. The defense has rested its case.
Yeah, we are learning that Jody Arias will not be back on the stand as the prosecution starts its rebuttal. Steve Kraft joins us with more tonight. Steve, is the end in sight?
I guess, but it's in the dim distance at this point. But I guess you could say the end is in sight. Arias will not be back on the witness stand. The prosecutor will not move to strike her testimony given during 2 days last fall when media and the public were kicked out of the courtroom. Instead, prosecutors began making their own case, calling their own witnesses. Prosecutor Juan Martinez called Deanna Reed to the witness stand. Travis Alexander dated her before he dated Jody Arias. Deanna Reed explicitly and firmly denied that Travis abused her in any way. The defense made much of a claim from an unnamed witness that Travis threw Deanna down, saying, "Get it through your bleeping head, I'm not going to marry you." But Deanna said that never happened. Then, Arias defense attorney Jennifer Wilmot got up to cross-examine Reed based on her earlier statements and a transcript, but Reed refused to answer her questions unless she could hear an audio recording of what she'd said earlier to attorneys during preparations for the trial. At that point, the judge ended court for the day. Earlier, Abe Abdul-Hadi testified for prosecutors. He said he was a higher-up in a multi-level marketing company that Travis worked for. Abdul-Hadi said he met Jodi Arias there, went to dinner with her, made out with her, and then they drifted apart. And then Jodi got in touch with him a year later, saying she was dating Travis and told him about Abe, and Travis was mad. Well, Abdul-Hadi said he thought this behavior was peculiar. So where do we stand now in this tangled odyssey of a trial? Well, it starts up again tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. No trial Thursday due to scheduling difficulties. Back in session next Monday. Reporting live, Steve Kraft, Fox 10 News.
Okay, Joey, this is the retrial. It's taking almost as long as the original trial. What do you make of this second retrial, and where do you see it going?
I make of it that it's very unfortunate. I mean, the Constitution guarantees a couple of things. One thing, of course, is a right to a fair trial, but the other thing is a public trial. And I think the fact that the public has been excluded from the trial, the judge making moves to, completely allow them to make the public ignorant of anything that goes on under the guise of protecting her rights, I just think it's a little extreme. And as a result of that, it's been disjointed. You're going to have Jodi Arias testify. You're going to throw everybody out of the courtroom. It's just the way in which it's been run really leads you to wonder and question just the nature of the system. Exactly. And so I think what will ultimately happen is that after this is done and everything's released, maybe, us in the media will have an opportunity to dissect, the issues, the testimony and everything else, and really make an assessment as to exactly what went on in that courtroom, because the judge has gone out of her way really to block access under the guise again of protecting a right to a fair trial. But keep in mind that she had a fair trial, she had a trial, and she was determined to be guilty. This is simply to assess whether or not she should be put to death, and I think reasonable minds might agree or disagree about it. But I just think that, that which is done in the dark comes out in the light. So I look forward to the light being shined upon everything, us in the media being able to evaluate the transcripts, the tapes, and everything else, and to just make a good faith assessment as to whether or not she deserves to be put to death. But I think those of us who have seen the trial, saw the atrocity she committed against Travis Alexander, and really feel terribly for his family that they have to be going through this a second time. It's just a tragedy.
Yeah, no question. We have a question from the chat room. Karen Hirsch. Witness 1 lied in a letter he wrote. They want to know, can Juan Martinez file a suit for lying?
Well, what happens is it's not so much filing a suit as much as it is going after people for perjury. The fact is that a court is a place where people can come in and give testimony, but we trust, respect, and rely upon the fact that people are going to testify truthfully. I think one of the big problems people had when the trial was public and we were able to see it the first time around were the various lies that were told primarily from the defendant, Jodi Arias herself. I mean, anybody can say anything at any time, and I think that's exactly what she did. Travis beat me. Travis abused me. Travis, my finger, look at because of this. Her family, her father's a bad guy, her mother's a bad guy. I just think that, really, people were really taken aback by the fact that she just said so many things that were just inconsistent with reality. And so at some point in time, the truth is going to have to prevail, and I just hope that that's sooner rather than later.
No question. Let's listen to this final clip, Adam Schefter, about DeflateGate, and we'll get your take on the other side.
Our good friend Adam Schefter. Adam, obviously the world is talking about this press conference. I don't know what Tom Brady said. I got no satisfaction out of it. Mm-hmm. What's your take?
He didn't look very comfortable up there, that's for sure. He did not seem at ease. He did not have explanations to offer. And I didn't find him as plausible as Bill Belichick, who, when he went up there with a purpose in mind. He was authoritative. He was definitive. He was to the point. He explained exactly how it worked in his world. With Tom, I think people were left to wonder. Now, again, I also think that this is exactly why it's going to be difficult for the NFL to pin this on somebody. Now, maybe they just find the Patriots. That's certainly possible, and take away draft choices. But the way I understood it even before these press conferences, and it makes a little bit more sense now, is that they were having a tough time pinning down all the evidence and putting it on a particular person, that it was difficult to do that. Now, again, we know about the balls being deflated, and it's a case where, I think that there were varying levels of the balls being deflated, some not as much as others. I've been told that as well. And they're going through their investigation, which, by the way, has not included speaking to Tom Brady as of yet. So how far along could that investigation actually be is a whole separate issue. But I think there are a lot of questions. There are going to continue to be a lot of questions. And I will say this, look, and we're on in New York, and we're talking in New York, and Jet fans and Giant fans, they would love nothing more than to see that franchise buried into the ground. But the fact of the matter is that if this were the Titans or Jaguars or Steelers or Raiders or Broncos, it would not even measure on the Richter scale. But because it's the Patriots, because it's the week before the Super Bowl, because they have their past, and that's a part of this, it becomes a big deal.
So I was going to ask you about the Brady not being spoken to yet. How surprised are you that this deep into the process they haven't spoken to him?
Well, that has to tell you that they can't be very deep into the process.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, how does an investigation without the person at the center of it go on if you haven't spoken to him? I mean, what is there to learn? To me, this investigation is centered around Tom Brady, centered around him, and everything else is on the peripheral scene of everything. But the league has not spoken to him, and until the league does, I don't know what can come out of this. Now, again, at the beginning of the week, I was told that the league could say something about its findings at some point this week. That was possible, but that there would not be anything that was to be expected until after the Super Bowl anyway. So,
all right, Joey, what is your take on this latest scandal with the New England Patriots? The first one, of course.
Let's see. What is my take? I guess I have a couple of takes. Look, on the one hand, you certainly expect that in professional sports or anything else that the playing field is even and that no side does anything by way of cheating to gain a competitive advantage. And so you don't want to see that, particularly when athletes are looked up to by so many and kids respect them and, you treat them like they're just deities and you idolize them, and then to find out that something like this could happen. Now, we don't know all the precise facts of exactly what went on. We don't know how much Tom Brady was involved, how much he may not have. Was it the ball boy? Was it not? They haven't spoken to him. That'll come out. But, you just want to see in professional sports that people follow the rules, that everybody plays fairly and nicely, and the winner wins. At the same time, when you look at the score of the game, 45-7, you wonder, well, would it have been 21-7 if the balls weren't in the way that they were? And and that's the other side of the equation. Look, a football in and of itself doesn't block another player. A football doesn't catch itself and make a pass. A football doesn't in and of itself win games without the talented people around them to make it happen. But at the end of the day, it's just a disappointment because, again, although I get, respect, and understand the fact that you still have to go out and execute no matter how many pounds of pressure in the ball. You're going to run the ball. You got to block your blockers. You got to catch the ball. You got to kick the ball. I respect and understand all that. But you just want people to, really be people of their word. A handshake is a handshake. A win is a win. A victory is a victory. And you just never want an asterisk next to it based upon people alleged to have been cheating. And so we'll see what the NFL does. I will say this, Jordan, it's been a heck of a year for the NFL. Let's see what next year brings for them. Boy,
oh my goodness.
It's been tough.
Yeah. I got two last questions from the chat. Mary writes in, can Joey comment on this ABA standard of conduct of criminal justice response? Jody Ayers, why Judge Stevens not fulfilling her obligation under the ABA standard of conduct, obligation to use the court time effectively and fairly?
Well, I think it's part of what I was speaking about before. And, there's some out there who do support the judge and feel that, she's doing a job. But at the same time, I get and respect the fact that judges have a responsibility to make sure a defendant has a fair trial. That's important. But at the same time, there are other competing interests. And it's not only about the defendant herself, but what about the victim, the defendant's family, and everybody else? And so, when you look at that, you really wonder, you bending over backwards to the detriment of Travis Alexander, the victim. He's the victim here. She's not the victim.
Right.
He's alive. She's well. He's stabbed to death. He's butchered. His throat is cut. His family's suffering. And so you just have to, there's some judges who would have run things entirely differently and would have allowed her to have a fair trial. I'm certainly, look, as a defense attorney, I absolutely respect, believe, and understand that there needs to be fair trials, but there also needs to be a fair accommodation for victims and their families. And so if it were a little bit more balanced on that way, I think people would be a lot more at ease with what has been going on in that courtroom.
And Karen wants to know, why did the bishop bring a lawyer? The bishop, I think I'm saying it right. Hope I'm saying it right. In the Jodi Arias case.
Well, in any particular proceeding, in the event that, for example, you are at all, there's any issue concerning your testimony, there's any issue concerning implicating yourself, there's any issue concerning perjury, there's any issue concerning lawsuits, there's any issue concerning your personal responsibility, liability, etc., anybody is entitled to have an attorney present. And so, listen, attorneys, for as much as you might say we're great, or as much as you might say we're awful, what do they say? No one likes attorneys until you actually need one.
Yes.
Right. So there's a role to be played there. But certainly anybody has the right to retain counsel and to bring counsel for whatever purposes they believe to be appropriate or not appropriate at any proceeding.
Okay, we have this one last caller from Virginia. Do you mind if we take it?
Not at all. Go Virginia.
Okay. Let's go over to 703. Please state your name, and you're on live with Joey Jackson. 703.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, hi. This is Mary from Virginia. Hi, Joey. It's Mary.
Hi, Mary. Thanks for calling. Good, thank you.
I already put my question, which you answered, that you did expand on, the fact that the judge has to try to make this a quick trial, not a quick trial, but to also think about how the families are being affected, how much is taking out their time, the finances, and everything else. It seems like Judge Stevens is bending over backwards to ensure that Jodi is getting a fair retrial, but it seems like she's being retried on the verdict rather than the sentencing.
Right. I get that, Mary. I think that, Judge Stevens, some would argue, has bent over backwards, forwards, sideways, and, contorted like a gymnast to give her a fair trial. And so she certainly has her critics, and I think some people certainly have a point, when it comes to that. The other issue to keep in mind as far as being retried is that since it's a new jury, obviously the new jury has to be brought up to speed on what the issues are, what exactly happened, so that they can make educated choices about whether Jodi Arias should be put to death or not. And so that was one of the problems going into the case. How much should we really retry everything so that we allow this jury to know exactly what happened without them having a force to make a decision about guilt, which is already, she's been found guilty. There's no question. It's already been found that there's been an aggravated factor of extreme cruelty, which makes her eligible for the death penalty. The only issue is whether she should get death. And so I think the judge, is exercising extreme caution because it's a capital case involving death. But at the same time, again, Mary, I think the issue also is the victims certainly have rights, and the victims' rights need to be respected also, not only the defendant Jodi Arias' rights. So I think if there were more of a balance, in respecting the victims' rights, I think people would have a little bit more faith and trust in the process than they do now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Have a great night. Thanks for calling in.
Thanks for the call, and Joey, let's hope for an overtime game Sunday. That would be interesting. I guess that would be a win for us, I guess, if we have an overtime game, because I'm sure you watch plenty of Super Bowls and there were blowouts. Not so much in the last few years, but the last exciting, great game was the Giants winning it. And I'm not a Jet fan, just for the record, but that game was just amazing. I don't know what to call it, Super Bowl.
It definitely was. Listen, Super Bowl Sunday is exciting. It's an important part of who we are, what we do. You know, the fact that we're entertained by professional athletes who are great at their jobs, and the fact that we get to watch all those Super Bowl commercials, eat all those chicken wings, have all those chips and dip. You know, so let's just have a safe Super Bowl. If people are going to drink, just don't drink and drive, and don't drink too much. We have work on Monday, but let's have a great Super Bowl Sunday, and you keep doing the great work that you do. It's always my pleasure to join you. It always seems like time's the enemy. We never have enough of it, but I enjoy the time.
Yeah, to the fame for me, and it's been my honor to have you on here, as always.
The pleasure is mine.
Thank you so much,
Thanks
Joey.
so much. Keep up the great work.
Okay.
See you soon, okay? Be well.
Appreciate it, Joey. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was Joey Jackson. Catch him on CNN. In 2 weeks from today, we will have Beth Harris, Dwayne Cates, and Ann Bremner. Friday, February the 13th, we will have Tom Mesereau. That's right, at a special late night time at 11 p.m. East and 8 p.m. Pacific time. So for now, thanks a million to Joey Jackson. He is an awesome guest and an awesome person. And keep up with him and keep up with the show at King Jordan Radio on Facebook and on Twitter at Mr. King Jordan. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll speak to you on Tuesday. If you follow wrestling, you can hear me on Tuesday where we talk about the world of wrestling. Tuesdays at 9. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll speak to you soon. And just a correction, the 13th is Tom Mesereau, and the 19th is Beth Harris, Dwayne Cates, and Ann Bremner. So that's that. Life coach a week from today.